G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. MGTOW has gone from a fragmented movement to a global phenomenon. It's a counterculture that may soon become the culture. The traditional social contract is failing. It has failed men, and in its place, an invisible empire is growing. It has been built not on the normal traditional sense of strated societies. It is a decentralized digital space where men are the architects of their own futures, where we engage each other freely without structure. There are no rules. There is no membership fees. We're not asking you to vote for us. We are merely exchanging our perspectives and experiences. The geopolitical ramifications, however, are powerful. The halls of power are shaking. The foundations of power is man's labour, the hyper-productive. And we are changing the world by engaging in an exodus from the corruption that is the matriarchy. Before I continue, empireofelves.myshopify.com. Themed merchandise from my Empire of Elves science fantasy. Step into the world of magic and wonder with the Empire of Elves, where science, technology meets fantasy, hope and wonder. Your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing have come to life. These artifacts will touch your heart and inspire your imagination. That's Empire of Elves, one word, .myshopify.com. Links in the description below. As I said, the traditional social contract has expired. The rise of the matriarchy began long ago. Without election, it was thrust upon us through passive aggression and is still continuing today, that if we do not obey women, they will give us nothing. But they give us nothing anyway. All they do is take. The breakdown of the social contract, where women would trade themselves, forego certain rights in return for security, stability, and a standard of living, is in profound collapse in most of the world. In a small, ever-decreasing parts of the world, the ruling class, predominantly male ruling class, holds the power through fear and violence. And they too are not our friend. See, not all people are against or for MGTOW. Or MGTOW is not for everyone. But for the vast majority of men, I believe there has been no choice. There has been a massive disconnect, a decline in trust. Women have treated men like garbage for decades. And in some countries, men are the enemy too, as they pander to the radical, to the insolent, to the boring, same, tired, cliche, angry, still thinks they're 15, going on 40 with no life experience whatsoever, academic. And a lot of them are champagne socialists who have no world experience. They were gifted a silver spoon of millions of dollars. And most of them make their money exploiting the working man. Hassan Pike, a real estate mogul. Let's look at AOC. Dilettante. Again, middle class, but upper class in many respects, with property in family trusts, I believe. By the way, she's a member now of the ruling class, and yet she acts as if she's a working class hero as she sips her $1,500 wine and whines on TikTok. The decline in trust is not just in government. There's a massive disconnect between citizens too, where women see men nothing but as pigs to be fleeced after decades and decades of slander, unadulterated slander, smearing all men for any perceived slight, and the so-called perfectionists, or the male feminist who wants to sniff women's panties but wants to come across as the good guy, or just basically the cuck who has no self-confidence, who wants to be crushed by others. Give in to these dominating, high-heeled pit bulls who call themselves activists. However, I think the biggest damage done is the cost of living crisis caused by the double income, no kid communist. Of course, boomers destroyed the economy by turning houses into assets to fund their retirement. They pushed inflation through high taxes and ever-increasing the cost of real estate in order to create a wage cost spiral, and governments and banks and many institutions and the investor class kept pushing further and further, calling it economic expansion. Finance is no longer a left or right issue. It's a predominantly social issue. It is not political anymore. It is a genuine phenomenon in which the left have engaged in a cost of living crisis and then blamed the right, and the right, who seemingly can't control or bring down or put a halt to, but the overspending that goes on because so much of our economy is out of government control, and foreign influence has too pushed prices for their own geopolitical gain at the expense of mankind. So you've created generational inequality where each generation from X, Y down has increasingly felt broken, while the boomers enjoy disproportionate amount of benefits because they were able to make investments early and watch their wealth grow at a phenomenal rate. And then they pulled up the ladder of success because they don't make their income through traditional means. They basically manipulate the stock market and sap retirement savings of everyone else into the stock market, into real estate. And every time the bubble bursts, they've already walked away. They're the ones doing all the... They've sold their stake before the collapse. And they just rinse and repeat. Again, I point to Hassan Piker and many others in LA who got extremely wealthy off the real estate bubble. Also, another inequality. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, government contracts, extremely wealthy, healthy government contracts. So, left, right, those are words that have no meaning to younger and younger generations. And we've seen it from X onwards, the constant parading of grifters who merely use words to get elected, and their sweet talk amounts to nothing but hollow promises. So you have declining trust in the government and women. You have a declining trust in each other, and so you have a generational inequality that cannot be patched, and a fragile welfare work pact where the foundation of hard work was meant to be greeted with a healthy retirement. That has fractured. A precarious labour market means that many men do not spend enough time working to accumulate the wealth required to retire, and every year their dreams of retirement falter as inflation outpaces the growth of the stock market. Because there's no more growth, there's no more hyper growth to be had. They tried to create new industries and they failed to create a phenomenon. Because creating one energy type does not add to the market, it just shifts the market to. And again, every new industry only benefits the few founding members. The majority do not see the benefits. Because $1 billion, apparently we've got 8 billion people. So people want less people now because they think it's going to increase their pie. And they get others to stop having children. So women stop having children because they get free housing and get to spend less of their money on everything else because, well, they fought long and hard to have single mother households, and then suddenly that plunges them into poverty, so they stop having children because having children plunges them into poverty. But for third worlders even now, it used to be the third world breeding like crazy because they've got free food, but as the free dries up from the back, again, there's nothing free. All this welfare was funded by the working class, and as working class increasingly cannot afford to spend frivolously like they used to, now, you have a right to spend your money as you please. But boomers spent frivolously on drugs and demanded free healthcare to patch up their frail and failing bodies. So they created a fragility in the workplace through economic insecurity. And on top of that, they broke the welfare pact by collecting welfare and selling all their assets and retiring early and milking the welfare system. And now we are finding out a lot of it has been fraud. Who knew, right? Childcare will drive up the cost of government, schooling, driving up the cost of government, and less returns have been visible, yet the majority of women just cannot get out of their own way. They keep voting for more jobs for themselves. So their own selfishness has created a fragility in the workplace, in welfare, and of course work, where increasingly men don't want to put in the effort because women get the same money for doing less. Individualism. Marriage, healthcare, pensions. So many things are out of your control. You don't decide who you marry. You try, you throw mud and hope it sticks, but increasingly that mud don't stick. But when it comes to healthcare, you throw mud all you like, but it's way out of your control. You don't control the quality of healthcare. You don't control your pensions. You have no say whatsoever in the economic future of your state, as it's controlled by central powers. And your central powers are controlled by the UN. And the UN is controlled by those who put the money in. And again, it comes back to the unelected having the power to buy votes. And it's not a left or right thing. China, Russia, Israel, all the countries of the world lobby the United States daily. The United States is driven by its economy and therefore does not respond to its citizens. And equally, India does not respond to its citizens. Equally, Russia, China does not respond to its citizens. Equally, around the world, left or right does not matter anymore. It's a paradigm of illusion. So all the risk is on the employee. You could get a job with what you thought was a prime company. You grew up watching this company, and and you're finding out the workplace is unstable with high turnover. Or you're stuck with insecure gig work until you get enough skill. And by then it's too late. You're 40. The skills, you're too old or outdated. You're spending your money constantly getting qualifications. Employers increasingly driving you to do unpaid overtime. It's the individualization of risk. So, yet, these are all factors we cannot control. We hold votes every year to try some fashion or form, yet, well, not every year, but you know what I mean. We do hold votes often. Most of us don't participate, but there are various elections around, or participation in party politics. Most of us don't have the time, and most of us are disillusioned because our individual voices, we just can't seem to get past the... no one seems to get past the noise. And when we do get someone we think is going to stand for us, they turn out to be a grifter and vote against some of the most basic things that we ask them to do. And they get re-elected and they get refunded because the vast majority are, again, not given the information because we are governed by algorithms. And algorithms, despite the fact they stand against MGTOW, from brother to brother, the message is spreading. Now, the key drivers of the breakdown is the economy, the rising resentment of women against men, the failure of representation where men is an institution of economic and legal minds of the same academic ilk who do not do anything other than grasp each other's arms and gatekeep to make sure that outsiders are smeared with slander and lies, bogged down in court defending themselves. The economic elite control us through algorithms online and increasingly offline through influencers who are artificially elevated through these algorithms to distract us, to keep you divided by spreading lies, slander, and fear of the average man. The globalization has taken jobs from the skilled, from the creator. The creator creates a product, and the product is taken overseas, and soon it's out of your control, and you're nothing but collecting a paycheck, while your country and all the effort that was put into creating products, or the academics, they don't care. The globalization means they get to teach more people. See, the chasing of the marketplace has robbed you of your these neoliberals. And again, liberalism is neither left nor right. It's full of morons on both sides. Have prioritised market domination over the welfare of its citizenry. So to make goods cheaper, they outsource production, outsource food, outsource everything, increasingly thinking that they can push the society, and if you can't keep up, they just see you as your fault. You're not good enough. It's eugenics. The whole market, the whole world is run by eugenics. And the crisis, well, they're ongoing, aren't they? Do you know how many viruses there are out there now? We've had Ebola outbreaks, hantavirus outbreaks. We've got the ongoing flu season. We've got H1N1 appearing now and again. We've got monkeypox going around. AIDS hasn't gone away. Now, of course, now we've got to compete against automation and AI. And the government does not care. And the welfare system does not offer anything other than a basic lifestyle. And women do not want a basic lifestyle. So the future landscape is seeing a decline in birth rates, which will see a decline in population numbers, which will see more and more automation, which will see governments turning more and more to robotics and to artificial citizens. That is, babies born without parents. Recently in Russia, you may laugh, but increasingly in Russia, they have been cloning cattle. They've gotten very good. The Russians have gotten very good at cloning. In fact, the world's first clone birth was in Russia. That is, a clone who gave birth to a clone. Once upon a time, these were phenomenal headlines, but because of globalization and division sowed by the media, the 45% of the population falls below the bell curve. Therefore, they are in the range of what you would call the slogan lovers. You want to know how many of your friends are of low IQ? Just post a meme and post something intelligent and see which gets the most likes. I know, I post memes all the time, and most people only care about the memes. The future, the bell curve's not going to change. Getting rid of the majority won't change the situation. You won't increase the size of the pie, because at the end of the day, robots and corporations are only going to prioritise wealth into the hands of the few, and they're not going to fund more citizens. And so they will, the future, 900 people living in 900 separate cities, trying to figure out how they can destroy someone to take their resources until it comes down to only one person left, and they will die, and with it, well, humanity died a long time ago, didn't it? See, competition has turned humanity against humanity. Instead of the uncooperative being the minority, the uncooperative human is now the majority. And increasingly, nationalism. It meant, once upon a time, the internet was seen as a great equalizer, that people with opinions and voices around the world could all be heard, regardless. But that isn't true. Do you see any Indians sitting down to watch my videos, bro? Maybe a few Japanese, some Malay, and I don't see. No. How many black people flock to Charlemagne the fraud just simply because he's black, and they want to hear black voices and black representation, and he could say the most outrageous lies. He could be fact checked every day over and over, and nobody will care. They can say their paranoid delusions over and over again, and no one will care. Until it's their culture that's under attack and their history being rewritten, their culture being infantized and then packaged and remarketed as a new diverse product for corporate IPs. No, this temporary slump is not temporary. This is the fall of Rome all over again. And it's not MGTOW. MGTOW is the response. It's the counterculture. MGTOW, once it's powerful enough, will build its own civilization, its own counter-civilization, and it will eventually replace the matriarchy. Because make no mistake, since the age of romance, now let's be clear, the age of romance was an intellectual, artistic and literary movement that peaked between 1798 and 1850. It was a reaction against the cold scientific rationality of that was the Age of Enlightenment. Though the Age of Enlightenment gave birth to the Industrial Revolution, it gave birth to a new bourgeois. Idle wealth. Wealthy landowners could hire lots of cheap labourers and their wives engaged in writing. And from there, you had the Jane Austens of the world and many others. And some men, academics, found themselves increasingly only doing a small amount of work for a large amount of money. So you had emotion over reason, you had nature and imagination prioritised over industrialisation, and, however, it did give us the rise of individualism. It was the peak of literature. Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, Shelley. America, its greatest authors, Poe, Dickinson, all came out of the Age of Romance. Storm and Stress, that was the German movement that swept the world. And then we all know how that movement ended. That was born in the Age of Romance. It was not a new phenomenon. It just peaked in 1939. Social change was predominantly driven by what they call Anglo-Franco revolutions, that is, American-French revolutions. And the Age of Romance is often a topic of love affairs that revived many a romance movie in the 80s, and the development of romantic attraction. See, one thing that the Age of Romance gave us was PDF. And if those who don't know what I'm talking about, illegal activities. The Age of Romance gave the focus on 12 to 13. Yeah, it was why it was put to death so early. Government crackdowns. But ideas of the Age of Romance, revolution, emotion over reason, storm and stress, that is the birth of socialism, social change, revolutionary change, the rise of liberalism, all born out of the Romantic Age, the rise of the gynocentric model, where women were seen as intellectual, artistic, and literary genius, and were held in high esteem. Even though today their period pieces are merely studied for the culture they represented at the time, merely as historical references. Their writing is no better nor worse than anything. I mean, it's a fact. Few writers ever achieve phenomenal success, and a lot of it is artificial. It's merely that they have a theme of the time that raises them above, temporarily, all the others, and then eventually they decline. But the wealth they have gained, they could leverage that into becoming the bourgeois. That is the idle wealth, where they become wealthy landowners. And those ages that followed the age of romance gave rise more and more to the idea of emotion, comedy. Still today, comedy rules politics. Funny insults, whether they be Donald Trump, witty, sharp retorts like Richard Nixon, long, funny stories, Reagan, warmth, home, the daddy or grandpa figures that Joe Biden, Barack Obama represented. These are all things developed out of the age of romance and gynocentrism. But as you can see, over time, when they stop being individuals and start becoming products, and when they start becoming motives, and when they start becoming political, and when people can no longer tell the genuine article, all they want is the same nostalgic repeat. They want the same cookie cutter, copycat. They don't want individuals anymore. And that rise of the collectivism, which followed the age of romance, the rise of collectivism, although it's not called that, but you can look throughout the world, the rise of collectivism, communism, socialism, pan-European states, pan-Africanism, the age of China. You've ever heard of the age of China? The Xi Jinping's policy to the new age to come, where they keep calling America a colonial power. Really, China's the one exporting people into other countries. India's the one exporting people to other countries. Africa's the one who's exporting people to other countries. That's colonialism. Europe is feeling the crisis the most. The decline in trust is at an all-time high, yet people keep still voting for nostalgia. Slowly, however, MGTOW is changing the course of history. Without MGTOW and the rise of the rugged individualistic male, we would not see, and it is for now, an invisible empire. But we are seeing the cracks in the system glowing, where strong, rugged individuals who carry more than words, their deeds carry weight, are changing the world for the better. Just look at the journalists who exposed the fraud in Minnesota and many other frauds since. Project Veritas, Charlie Kirk. People who are making a difference, whether they MGTOW or not. These are men who made or making a difference because of their strong words or deeds. They're not going to be remembered like the assassins or the violent revolutionary. They are passé. They're a dime a dozen. The angry terrorist, scratch a liberal, you'll find one. Yeah, the future landscape is MGTOW. We all know it. The liberal establishment is bitterly clinging to the past. See you in the future, ladies and gentlemen. But don't forget, future comes at a cost of hard work and development. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You support the channel in a number of ways. Other than my merch, I have Ko-Fi, Patreon, $1 a month to support my RPG and my writing, Empire Valves. So all my links are in the link tree, description below, in the profile. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate you. See you in the future. Bye. Bye for now.